All right, so we're going to create the structure of this Java program in a software application or a software program that we know as All right, so welcome back to the basics of Java. We are going to be putting the structure, the basic structure of a Java program into a Java application or an IDE, that we're going to be calling, or that we're going to use JGraph. So you should have JGraph installed on your machine. If you don't currently have it on your machine, then you're going to want to stop the video here, follow the instructions in the Getting Started module for installing JGraph on your machine. So I'm going to assume that you have it there. So I'm going to click on File and then New. If you'll notice, JGraph will support a number of different programming languages, such as C++ and Objective-C. For our purposes, we're going to be using Java, so I'm going to select Java. And it's going to give me several different windows. The window in the center is going to be my text editor, where I'm going to be typing the code. So let's begin typing the basic format of a Java program. All right, so let me start the conversation by mentioning the fact that the day before the semester began, I broke my little finger. So I am now running off of 9 digits, and so you're going to have to give me a little bit of slack for my spelling skills, because I am typing slower and I am misspelling a lot of things because I'm missing my little finger. All right, so after you've done File New, and we've told it that we want a new Java program, we're going to write the basics of a Java program. So, public class, and then we're going to give this public class a name. We're going to call this one Dream. Remember the naming conventions. So, the name of the class must begin with a letter. It can contain symbols and letters and numbers, but it cannot contain a space. So I'm going to have an opening brace and a closing brace, and then I am going to give my closing brace a label by adding a comment to it. Almost every programming language I've encountered, except for SQL, allows you to add comments into your code, and that's just lines of code that are ignored by the compiler. So I'm going to label this as end class, and I'm going to show you why I'm going to do that in just a minute. I'm going to go inside of this class container, and I'm going to tab in to make it more readable. And then I'm going to key in the main container, public static void main, and then I need parentheses, and inside the parentheses I'm going to type the word string with 2 square braces and then the word args inside those parentheses. Once I go outside the parentheses, I'm going to indicate the beginning and the end point of this container by having my opening and my closing curly braces. And then I'm going to give this a name, end main. And from now on, I'm just going to blame every one of my spelling mistakes on my gimpy little finger. So that's just the way it'll be. So I'm going to have these 2 containers, my class container. Your code should be readable. I should be able to drop from the name of my container down to his closing brace. And so I'm going to tab in the main container so that I can drop from his opening name to his closing brace, and anything that I put inside of here, I'm going to tab in. So I'm going to push these 2 closing braces down a little bit to get them out of my way so that I don't accidentally delete them, which I've been known to do frequently. And then we are going to type in here something that will print to our screen. So I'm going to use system.out.print, and then I'm going to follow that with parentheses and a semicolon. Anything that I put inside of these parentheses will print to the screen. So let's just print to the screen, hello world. Oops. Hello world. All right, so I am going to, if you remember, I have to take my plain language, if you can call Java that, my plain language and convert it into a language that my computer can understand, and I'm going to do that by compiling the code. And this green plus sign is how I'm going to compile this code. Now, the very first time that I try to do this in JGraph, it's going to force me to give the file a name. So I can either press compile, and it will force me to save it, or I can just press the save, or the file save as button, and it will allow me to save it. Now, the one thing that you need to know about JGraph is that the name of the file here must be the name of the class. See, my class is called Dream with a capital D. My file name is Dream with a capital D. Letter for letter, word for word, the name of the file must be the name of the class. So I'm just going to let JGraph call it whatever it wants. I'm just going to tell it where I want to put it. And so for our purposes here, I'm going to put it on my desktop into a file or into a folder called Student Programs, and I'm going to allow it to save it. Once that happens, I can see the tab down here on my screen now says the name of my file, and of course across the top I can see the name of my file. So now I can compile it. Now that the file has been saved, I'm going to press the compile button again, and what I'm going to see is down here underneath my text editor box, I am going to see my command line box or my command prompt. And what I'm looking for is something that says operation complete. Once it is completed compiling and life is good, I'll see operation complete. Now that my program has been converted into a language that my machine understands, I can run it, which is this red running man. So once I've compiled it and I see with no errors, which we'll talk about in just a second, I see operation complete, which may take a few minutes, depending upon the speed of your machine. Mine is probably slower than yours. Then I'm going to run it, and down here in the same box, I'm going to see the output. And if I can drag this line up, if you'll notice now it says Hello World. Because I printed using system.out.print, I printed to the screen. Now, one of the things that I should mention to you now as we begin that Java is a case-sensitive language, which means that this must be a capital S. This must be a capital F because Java is case sensitive. Everything else on my screen is lowercase. HTML, SQL, these kind of things are not case sensitive, but Java is. And so to Java, a capital S is not the same thing as a lowercase s. I know that because I can look at any ASCII table and I can see that the ASCII value for uppercase S is not the same as the ASCII value for lowercase, and Java is a case sensitive language. So what we're going to do now is we're going to evaluate some of the errors. Some of the errors that you may be receiving in your code, and we're going to see if we can evaluate what it means. Every executable line of code in Java must be followed with a semicolon. And so this system.out.print must be followed with a semicolon. Let me remove that semicolon. Let me compile it and see what kind of an error message I get down here in my command line. I'll drag this up, and the beautiful thing is JGraph tries to tell me what's wrong with my code. I see in green, error. And then I see what JGraph thinks the error is, and it says semicolon expected. It's telling me what it believes the error is. And it even goes one more step farther. Below that, you'll notice that it says system.out.print. Look at this little caret right here. This caret is pointing to where it believes the problem is. And if I compile it one more time, it even goes one step farther. And if you'll notice, when it gives me the error, back in the text editor, it will highlight the line of code where it believes the error is. So not only does it tell me what it believes the error is, and it points to it using the little caret, but it also brings my cursor back to the line where it believes the problem is. So if I add the semicolon here and I press the compile button, life should be good. So the number one most common mistake or error that we make as programmers is missing semicolons. The second most common error that we make is what I call orphan braces. So these two braces are a matched pair. In JGraph, if I highlight one of the two, it will highlight, notice here, a public static void main. Notice how this opening brace highlights when I hover over and down on my brace and main. See how they highlight as a pair? I can do the same thing with my class, the pair of curly braces for my class. So the second most common error that I have is what I call orphan braces. It's when you accidentally forget to have an opening or closing brace, or if you overwrite it or delete it. Let me compile it and see what happens if I have an orphan brace. You're going to see this error message, reached end of file while parsing, which means that it has been combining braces, matching braces up, and it gets to the very bottom of the program, and it realizes I don't have a matched pair. Now, it doesn't matter which one of these two closing braces is missing. Let me do that one and compile it again. It is still going to give me the same error message. If I have an unmatched set, by the time I get to the end of the program, I'm going to see this message, error, reached the end of the file while parsing. I would strongly encourage you not to go to the bottom of your program and just blindly put a closing brace, because there's a very good chance that you are missing closing braces for, let's say, containers 3 deep inside of your code. So you need to find where the curly brace is missing. One of the best ways to do it is to have labeled your closing braces, because if I label this brace, I forget to type it or I accidentally delete it, and then let's say, for instance, I am missing a brace, then I come back over here and I hover over this brace, who I said belonged to the end class, but notice it is now matched with the opening brace for public static void main. If I uncover it, see who he believes that he is matched with? And so one of the things, and I look at my label on it and I say, no, he's not supposed to belong to main. He belongs to the class. So this is one of the ways that I can find out who these closing braces are, is if you label them. And there'll be times when you have multiple closing braces down here at the end, and it is very simple to end up with orphan braces. All right, so you say to yourself, okay, semicolon. Why don't I have a semicolon here at the end of dream, or here at the end of this one, at the after the opening curly brace of public class dream? The reason why we don't put it there is because public class dream is a container name. It is not an executable line of code. Therefore, I don't put a semicolon at the end of it. The same can be said of public static void main. You might be inclined to put a semicolon here, or you might be inclined to put a semicolon here at the end of this. This is not an executable line of code. It is a container name. Public class dream is a container name. Public static void main is a container name. We put semicolons at the end of executable lines of code. All right, so let's look at other error messages that we might be receiving. Let me compile it to make sure that I have put everything back right. I've spelled everything. Java is a case-sensitive language, which means that if I put lowercase system.out.print and I compile it, Java's not going to know what the word system means. And the error that I'm going to get is package system does not exist. And then it is going to point to the best of its ability with this caret right here to where it doesn't understand. It does not know what this is. The lowercase system does not exist. So if I uppercase it and compile it again, life should be good. All right, so now what about this S? What if I lowercase that S and I compile it? Let's see what Java has to say about that, or excuse me, NetBeans. JGraft. What is JGraft? It says, cannot find symbol. Well, what symbol can't you find? Well, the symbol I cannot find is the class string. And the caret is pointing right here. See the caret? The caret is pointing at string. It doesn't know what this symbol, lowercase string, means, because Java is a case-sensitive language. So, another common mistake that we might have is where the name of the class does not match the name of the file. So let's say, for instance, somehow I managed to get another name of my class than I have for my file. I'm going to compile it and see what kind of error messages that I get. It is going to tell me class dream111 is public and should be declared in a file named dream1111. If you'll notice, my file is called dream. My file is called dream up here. I have two options available to me. I can either save this file under the new name, dream1111, or I can change the name of the class to match the name of the file. Either one is an acceptable alternative. For our purposes, I'm going to change the name back to dream. And then just so we can see what will happen if I put a semicolon here inside of my container name, I'm going to put a semicolon after the word dream and see what it has to say about that. The error message is going to be semicolon expected, curly brace expected. It's expecting a curly brace to follow the name of the class, so let me put a semicolon here, which is often another thing that students will do. I'm going to put a curly brace at the end of my main container name, and it says missing method body or declare abstract. That semicolon effectively ends the execution, and I have therefore effectively terminated any instructions inside of my main. And so it says you don't have a method body. And so if I delete it and recompile it, life should be good. So these are examples of some of the errors that we would be receiving when we are running our program. So I'm going to stop this recording here, and when we come back, we will continue.